Okay, is that better? All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call the regular school board meeting for Monday, November 22nd to order. I would like to do a roll call of the directors. We'll start over here. Go ahead, Will.
The representative for the board is here.
Mine is turned on.
Oh,
It's on.
They all are on?
Yours
Okay. Okay. No. Sarah Hughes here.
Cindy Cassidy here.
Jeremy Mask here.
Roger Canoy here.
Eddie Vanami here.
All right, and we'll go right to the Pledge of Allegiance. The I-35 mission statement reads as follows. The Interstate 35 Community School District exists to develop lifelong learners and responsible, productive, successful citizens in an ever-changing society. The district priorities. Number one, articulate and support a cohesive student-centered pre-K through 12 vision for continuous school improvement. Number two, engage in effective teaching and relevant learning for the 21st century. And number three, operate with fiscal integrity, efficiency, and effectiveness. All the board members should have received the agenda, and it was posted. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Jeremy, before you guys do that, we do have the positive, educational spotlight tonight, and I inadvertently left it off, but Katie Klingon-Smith with the ag students are back to tell us about their trip that they took.
Oh, yeah,
So
absolutely.
that will be on the agenda, I just did not have it on this, so
Where are we placing that
we're
one?
gonna put it right before the student representative report.
Okay. All right, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda at this point.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, or to adjourn.
Wow, getting ahead of yourself.
To approve the agenda. As amended. As amended, yes, thank you.
I'll second that.
It has properly been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Brings us to the open forum. We've got Nathan Gibson.
Good evening, members of the board. First, I want to clarify, later on, we have another public hearing, but I think that's specific, or open forum, but I think that's specific to the calendar. So it does not look like in the second half of the board meeting that we have any other public forums associated with any of the other items. So rather than talk during that school calendar about other things, I'll address. So there's a couple things I want to bring up as I read. Specifically, I want to bring your attention to the section 4C, the discuss or approve the superintendent's recommendation on annual designations. While most of this don't have any concerns with, one of the things I would recommend to the board members, existing and new ones that'll be up here shortly, is that section 4C, where you talk about the legal counsel recommendation. I brought this up a couple times in the past about our need to potentially look at different legal counsels that can advise the board with a little bit different lens than what they have in the past. I think there's an opportunity here for us to go out on the market and potentially look at legal counsel that would advise us based off more conservative views of the laws and opportunities when we're dealing with things like vaccine mandates and masks. So one of the things I would request the board to do, obviously as a constituent, since my tax dollars are paying for the advice that this group is giving you is to do a motion to table at least 4C, to allow an opportunity to go back and look at other legal counsel opportunities before we approve that agenda item. So I do have that request for 4C. You can approve everything else, but a motion to pause and not approve that one until we can look at other legal counsels. So the other thing I wanted to bring up is specific to the OSHA mandates. I know that is on hold, and I'm glad to see, Sharon, that we're not pushing forward with that until we figure out what the courts will do. But I want to make sure that there is ample time and, more importantly, ample opportunity for teachers and staff to voice their opinion on that. I don't know all the details, but apparently an email or a notice went out to teachers and staff a few weeks back saying this was coming December 5th, and my phone started blowing up. And I know several others in the communities, only because I think, most people in the community know I'm very vocal and I'll come up here and talk, but some of these teachers and staff are too afraid, to bring that up. So we need to think about how we can give them an opportunity to engage with the board, to give their thoughts on that matter without fear of reprisal or job status or whatever it may be. But I was surprised when I started getting those phone calls, and I committed to those teachers and staff that, hey, I'll inquire about it on your behalf, which I did. I think Jeremy saw that email I sent to Sharon about that. So we do need to make sure before we implement that. I'm hoping, obviously, that the court system goes through and it's determined that it's unconstitutional like we all believe it is. But if it doesn't, we want to make sure that we're not alienating those who choose not to get the vaccine. They shouldn't be forced to wear a mask. They shouldn't be forced to be tested. If you look at other viruses and diseases, just look at HIV and others, we don't make those people who have that, stand out from the crowd. We shouldn't do that with, something that's no worse than the common cold or the common flu. So let's just pay attention to that, handle that really delicately, and make sure teachers and staff have an opportunity to voice their opinion. So those were the main things that I had to talk about tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Heather Jelsma.
Good evening. I'm just going to kind of second what Nathan said. I think we're all watching this OSHA situation really closely, and I know that right now you've said nothing's slated to change right now, but I just want to take this opportunity to go on record with my opinion. Last year, it seemed like the board was deferring all of your decisions on policy to lawyers, and I understand why. It's a time of uncertainty. Everyone's just kind of trying to navigate it, get through, and survive, and we as parents weren't really weighing in as well. We weren't giving you our feedback and our opinion at first. But I hope that going forward, you will be able to take a little bit more of a proactive approach to making your decisions. And the new members, personally, I'd really like it if, Superintendent, if you could give the public a chance to weigh in on policy changes that would affect teachers and staff and students potentially. One of the reasons why I'm paying such close attention to this is, it's not going to affect my kids. The employment part is not going to affect my kids, except that it will, as it affects teachers, it's going to affect my kids. And I feel like it's setting, if this OSHA thing were allowed to stand, and depending on your response to it, that sets a precedent for what I believe is coming next, and that's mandates for kids. And so I'm really watching closely, kind of to see how you guys react, how everything plays out. I hope that you'll take your time and not feel rushed to make important decisions without really doing your research and without hearing from your constituents and from the public. And I hope that when you implement policies that you'll really take into account what the public wanted. I think November 2nd was a clear signal. You weren't hearing from your lawyers. You weren't getting recommendations from your lawyers. You were hearing from the community, what the community wants to see going forward. And so just in the future, I know it's not, guaranteed, but if the OSHA thing is allowed to stand, and if you are forced to vote on a policy that might require teachers who are unvaccinated, staff who are unvaccinated, to wear masks or to get tested weekly, I hope that you'll really make broad use of exemptions. So right now in Iowa, we have exemptions for if, you can just sign your thoughts. You don't have to have a medical person, sign off on it. You don't have to have a pastor or a priest sign off on it. You can make that statement for yourself. And so I hope that, maybe you do feel forced to have to vote for a policy that would put these mandates in place. If we could also have a lot of exemptions and a lot of leeway with the exemptions to make it fair for everyone. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Did we move the student report after the spotlight or before? Before. All right. Will, you're up.
All right, well, something I told Sarah was that apparently 90% of the student body didn't know I was on the board, and upon learning it, immediately demanded better lunches. So that was on the list about 50 times. Apart from that, success on the blood drive run by NHS. We have upcoming winter sports kickoff, so that's always good. And a reminder to keep students engaged during pre-break days because we're entering break season, and they're prone to not doing work because we're going on break soon. So just emphasis on that, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Will. I apologize for completely screwing that up.
I thought maybe I didn't hear you right.
No, you probably did. I'm just, my notes aren't clear. All right. So we'll do the spotlight, education spotlight.
So we have Miss Klingensmith here, I think.
She's here, but actually her students have not shown up, so
Oh.
we're wondering if we can postpone.
Can we do it next month?
Yes, and we'll make sure it's on the agenda so
Yes. then
It's
we
read
won't be
correctly.
Confused about when the order is. Okay.
thank you. Principal reports.
Don't really have a whole lot different from when I shared with you last month. I know last month was just a few weeks ago, actually, the board meeting. Had a lot of fun things we did there towards the end of October. We had the trick-or-treating event that I had shared with you. We've had just some other things kind of going on that, our marathon of Roadrunners, we're continuing that. We're kind of in that holding pattern right now between Halloween and Thanksgiving, and people are looking forward to Christmas break, and we're just kind of in that operating mode. So I don't have a whole lot new to share with you unless you have any questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I handed out the board, and I have a few extra of those copies, but just two things for you this month from the secondary or from the high school anyhow. On November 12th, this doesn't have to do with the handout, but on November 12th, we had our College of Career Fair here for the high school students. That day represented were 30-plus career professional trades individuals that were invited into the building 15 colleges, and 6 forms of the branches of our armed service. So students got, in the AM, the students were selected through FlexiSkedge. So they were able to select what their preference was as far as seeing a professional or trades individual talk about their career in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we had those colleges and then the armed services as well represented that they could select from. So I believe they went to 5. Will, is that right? 5 in the morning, 5 in the afternoon? Yep. So they got to see a wide variety of opportunities on that day. Tina and Mrs. Steinlogge do an amazing job with that day because there's a lot of logistics that go into that, whether that's from arranging for people to be here or scrambling at the last minute because of cancellations. It really is a good day for our students to be able to see and experience a lot of different opportunities for post-secondary options. Some of the feedback that we got from both kids and presenters, one, they were very, very complimentary of our students and how respectful they were in the classrooms when they were hearing about the various careers. They just, from multiple people, they complimented us because we do ask them to give us some feedback for our own students, and then we also ask the kids as well. Students really liked the variety of options that they had that day, had talked about the colleges or individuals talking about post-secondary options being better presenters. I saw on the agenda, Sharon's going to talk about some sub-shortage type scenarios, but I think colleges are experiencing that same thing. So if they have someone in admissions that could go and talk, they just kind of send whoever, and then that affects some of what they share that day. But it is a great day. It's a full day for our high school kids, so they did miss a day of instruction, but gained a day of opportunity. So that was a great day. In front of you, I gave you a handout, and we had grade level assemblies last week. Middle school did something for a totally different purpose, but high school did theirs. We did the same thing based on our student connectedness survey. I've got indicated on this, I tried to put multiple slides on the pages for you, but that very top left corner of what I would call the front page has an arrow pointing to the student connectedness piece. That goes back to our continuum of learning, so it's one of our pillars, I would call that. You might also remember we talked about the culture of learning survey that's given in the spring that gave us an indication we should look into that connectedness, which is where our building goal is directed from. We had 270 kids in the high school, 205 responded. So 76% response rate from high school kids. The various graphs are there to indicate to you how they answered those questions. Do you feel welcome at Interstate 35? 83.4% said yes. Do you feel safe at I-35? 86.8% said yes. The next question is there an adult at I-35 you feel comfortable with to go to with a concern, suggestion, celebration? 79.5% of students said yes. Is there another student at I-35? So the reason we asked that question was if you don't have an adult that you feel comfortable with, do you have a friend, do you have a peer, someone that's close to you that you do feel comfortable with to take those concerns to, and 91.2% of students responded with yes. Are you happy to be a part of I-35? 78.5% of students said yes. So I think the data was great, and those are just screenshots directly from the Google form. So there's no change of the data. It's just what it said to us. But the written feedback is always what I feel is good to dive into because we did get some good written feedback. So our BLT team went through the written feedback on this survey, and we came up with the 5 little arrows there. Students really want to be followed up with. So when they bring a concern, they want to make sure that whatever that concern is has been followed up with. So we made a note and have made a point here within this last week to talk to teachers and students about whatever it is they bring to make sure they know there's some closure to that, or there hasn't been something else that has added on top of that. So that's point 1. Point 2 is communication. In the high school, we have information boards that are up on the north wing and as well right outside the superintendent's office in the main north-south hallway. Those are so that we can put our signs and communication up in designated locations, so kids aren't kind of going all over the place waiting to see what pops up on the walls next. They can find any information in those 3 specified locations. We also talked about checking email on a regular basis. We do a lot of communicating through email with students, whether that's daily announcements or updates on various things if they do email. So making sure that we become routine in checking that email on a regular basis. Feedback form. Will mentioned lunches, so they talked about lunches and what those options could be. I visited with Angie Stroh about that, so provided them a little bit of feedback on what that looked like, and some of it comes from constraint of being able to order things, but we also talked about being able to bring our own. So we'll, after Thanksgiving, we've talked about how we can get the microwaves back out for kids, which I think was appreciated on their part. But visited with Angie about how to get some feedback. So we're going to put a feedback form together. So as things like that come up, kids can scan a QR code and give us a little feedback on whatever it is they feel necessary to give that feedback on. Advisory lessons. There were multiple feedback pieces, whether it was about bullying, stress, or inclusion, and wanting to talk about those things a little bit more. We do hit on all of those various topics within our advisory lessons with students. So just encouraging them to be present, be engaged in those conversations, and not be afraid to ask questions or additional information. Even if it's not to your advisor or that person that you take or have those advisory lessons with, maybe it's with that teacher that you do have a connection, or you do, maybe it's a coach. So those are the individuals you can either ask those questions to or advocate for some additional feedback on. So that's what we met about on last week, and that was the connectedness survey that we hit on that last month when I talked. So those are the 2 main things for the high school, unless you have more questions.
The only question I have is, if I remember right, the connectedness survey, the one that we saw some of the results from previously is one that's kind of benchmarked with other schools, other people. This one is kind of our own group, so
Yep.
there really isn't a benchmark.
Correct.
Are you planning on making this something that we can benchmark year after year?
Yeah. So we talked about when we would follow back up with this again. So we've identified these pieces that were not just within the data, but within the written feedback. We'll follow back up with this in January, likely admission of the exact same survey, just to get a gauge of where we are. Is there anything else that we need to be having attention drawn to? But yeah, we would plan to monitor this just like we do our FAST scores 3 times a year, just so we don't see a dip up or down one direction or the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castor. Ms. Dutry.
Hello. So in the middle school, some things that have been going on lately, we had a wellness challenge. And so every week the kids had something that they were kind of tracking. If they were eating their fruits and vegetables, they were trying to limit their screen time, they were trying to drink plenty of water, so those kind of things. And then the PTO came in and did a little reward day for the kids who participated in it. We had a 612 band concert. Mr. Tessaw directed a fabulous play. We also started our new club second quarter, so some things changed. Some clubs stayed the same. Fantasy football is still going on second quarter, but some of them made some changes in their clubs. So those are some of the things that are happening in the middle school right now. We had been seeing some challenges with some behaviors in the middle school. And so one thing, actually Mr. Weber and I have been kind of working together through is setting some expectations for students. And so we started by having an assembly-like meeting type thing where each grade level, just each grade by themselves came in and met for 5 to 7 minutes, and Mr. Weber kind of talked through, this isn't a discipline thing. This isn't you're in trouble. This is what can we do, what can we work on together to make the culture in the middle school a better place where everybody wants to be here and is happy to be here and wants to learn. And so 2 of the main things that we talked about were respect and responsibility. So if you're being respectful, that's how we treat others, both your peers and your teachers. It's also how teachers treat each other and treat you. And then responsibility, taking responsibility for your actions and your words, not just in the classroom, but when you're participating in activities and when you're at home. And of course, we're all going to make mistakes. So also taking responsibility when you do make a mistake and, hey, I messed up and how can I learn from that and moving forward. So we started by meeting with the kids, and then I sent home some communication to parents, just letting them know, hey, we met with the kids. If you could continue these conversations at home, specifically about respect and responsibility, these are the 2 things that in the middle school we're really going to try focusing on the next couple months to kind of just hopefully help with some of the challenges we're having. The third thing we did then is with teachers, we asked that every middle school teacher post the words respect and responsibility in their classrooms. Some just wrote it on their board. Some used a Bitmoji and put themselves with the word respect. Just kind of depends on each teacher's personality, but you will see the words respect and responsibility in every middle school classroom now. And then they also are starting class, every class period, bringing up both words respect and responsibility. Could be something as simple as, hey, today when we're moving around the room in these small groups, I ask that you show each other respect by doing these specific things. Or as we're working today, it will be important that you're showing your responsibility by taking notes or keeping track of these things, or just kind of depending on the class and what they're working on, just reminding the kids, not only with the visual in the room, but here are some ways that you can practice those 2 character traits that we're really trying to work on here in the middle school with respect and responsibility. So that's just kind of one thing that has kind of been a challenge in the middle school lately with some behaviors, and so we're kind of trying to work through, not just with the kids, but with the teachers as well, and also making that connection with home. How can we make this better? So, any questions?
I know it's early on, but how's it going? You did it last week.
So our assembly was on Wednesday? Wednesday. So I would say it seems promising. I think our email to teachers was even like, this isn't going to be like a fix-all, of course. I do think, though, it's also given teachers something to kind of start those conversations with kids. If there is a mistake in the classroom or if something happens in the classroom, they can, take that kid out in the hallway and say, hey, remember, we're working on this respect thing. So it's also kind of helped them start some of those conversations. So it seems promising. I think it'll be important, to your point, though, that when we come back after Thanksgiving, to make sure that those visuals are still there and that we're starting class with it, so that it's not just like, oh, this happened for 4 days and now it's forgotten. I think we have to make sure that it's, if it's a priority, it has to be a priority in order for it to continue.
And then are you thinking about maybe rolling it into the elementary school? Because, right, middle schoolers were elementary schoolers last year and the years before, and it might be good to start earlier.
They do have what they call PBIS program.
Oh, sure.
So they talk a lot about these specific skills. I think in the middle school, sometimes it just looks different, because sometimes, to be honest, we feel like kids should know these things, and we sometimes forget to teach them specific skills and remind them about them because we just think they should know them. And the majority of them do, but some of them just need that reminder about what that looks like. So hopefully this will help.
Good. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Superintendent report.
So I have a couple of things on here that are just going to be a quick overview of things that have happened in the last couple of weeks. Several of the teachers, so Ms. Burkhead and myself, Kelly McKinney, Natasha Cooper, the curriculum director, Heather Wells, who is our technology coordinator, and Haley Young all attended an ISASP training and Next Steps conference. And we came back and generated what that means here. So ISASP, if you remember, is the assessment that we now give instead of Iowa assessments or instead of ITED, ITBS, if you've been around long enough. And so what we did is we determined what our goals were going to be, and that was how do we make the tools available from ISASP accessible for teachers? Because one of the things that we see a lot, and I think we're getting better at it, but if I'm a teacher and I have Will in class and I want to look at his FAST scores and I want to look at his ISASP scores and I want to look at his QRI 7 scores so that we can look and say comprehensively, if Will needs help, what should we start with? Teachers have to go to several different places to get that information. And so ISASP, being a new assessment, is one of those there's a ton of reports available. That doesn't mean teachers have access to them all. So how are we creating access for reports so that teachers can use them in class as they're instructing kids? So that's goal one. The goal two is how do we prepare students for the kind of test they're taking? Because this is the test that they take that's online. And sometimes the vocabulary is different than what they use in the classroom. So how are we doing a better job of making sure we're either using that vocabulary interchangeably so that they know on the test this might be the word you hear synthesize. When we talk about it, this is what we use in class. So how are we making those connections? So what strategies or skills are we going to work with teachers on, work with students on so that they're comfortable when they do see that test online in a little different format. So that will be coming to teachers after Thanksgiving. We're going to do some think alouds with some of the questions and give students some testing strategies that they can use beyond just the ISASP test, but they can use for any kind of testing. We know a lot of kids get test anxiety, so we're planning to alleviate some of that with strategies. So that's the ISASP training and next steps section. I wanted to give a quick update. Any questions about that one? That I'll bring more over the course of the next 2 or 3 months just because we get ready for that in April. And we'll go from there. The foundation update, if you remember, about 3 years ago, we had a group that wanted to donate money to the school. But since we were not a 501c3 status, we were limited in what we could take. We're not a nonprofit. We don't make money, but we're not labeled a nonprofit according to the Tax Revenue Service. So we opted to look at creating a foundation, which we had a great core group of community members that got together and generated ideas. We then asked 7 community members to serve on the initial board for that foundation, which began in 2019. And then we were going to do our first fundraising event in May of 2020, and obviously that did not happen. So they are back at it. They have their first fundraising event on the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. It is a social media event. And it's 135 for I-35. So we're asking 135 alumni or supporters of Interstate 35 to donate $135 for Interstate 35. So we have banks donating, we have administrators, teachers, community members, grandparents. So we're going to make this social media event, and we'll give you an update. I think the board is planning on coming. 1 or 2 reps from the board are going to come and talk to you about what their mission is. If you have questions, we do have information on the website, and I'll just kind of show you what that looks like here. So if you go to the menu tab, they have their link here. And so it's got kind of how it generated or how it started, what the mission and vision are. And then frequently asked questions, how you can donate. We know that some businesses donate time. So for example, if you serve on the board, the corporation that you work for will donate to a 501c3. And so this allows community members to do that, which we have had interest in. So this is a revamped website, so we're excited about that. You'll see there's foundation members there, the Facebook page with the happenings. If you're not on that and you want to like it, that would be a good thing to do. And then obviously ways to donate. And we did get that set up so that they can donate electronically. So the idea is to look at opportunities to provide either additional things for kids to experience or explore, or to supplement things that are really solid practice. So for example, one of the things that they've talked about is, can we buy instruments for 5th graders to practice and try out for band? So instead of parents having to rent something for a month or 2 months or 3 months, can they come in and try out the trombone 1 time or 2 times or 3 times, and then maybe switch to something else if they realize that's not for them? So could they use some of that money to purchase instruments for the band so that every kid can participate? So we do have a band program and we do have instruments. This would just enhance it. So that's what their mission is. So Brian Nelson is the president of the foundation, and Kelsey Ritchie is the vice president. So anybody that has questions can contact them. But they will probably be coming in January to give a more comprehensive look at what they do and who they are. So any questions about the foundation? The roundtable discussions, that's something I started when I came. It's an opportunity for staff, the different departments to meet with me in a group, or if they feel more comfortable, one-on-one, and just share concerns, celebrate things that are going well, and then we look collectively. Jen Boffman, our HR director, usually attends those with me, and we look for themes, we look for things that maybe we look at district-wide, we look at maybe something specific to a department, and then we work with that director, that administrator, or that staff if something needs to be changed. So we did roundtables last week, and we saw some similar conversations. Some of it, I think, Mrs. Dutry expressed with some of the behaviors we were seeing in the classroom or in the hallway, and how were we attacking that. Some of them were the concerns about the OSHA mandate, so we talked through that. So all of those things came to the roundtable, and then next week, like I said, Jen Boffman, our HR, and I will meet, and we'll go through those and share those with the director if it's relevant to what they're doing and things they need. Some of it, a staff member might just come talk to me independently, you know, and I can resolve an issue that way if they don't feel comfortable talking in a large group. So we'll do that in the spring as well. We used to do it just once a year, but they like to have the opportunity, and a lot of it is the celebrations that we get out of that, what's going well. And so we're doing it in the fall and again in the spring. So that's roundtable discussions. Any questions about that? The sub shortages, that's a challenge. We have a labor management committee meeting scheduled for December, the first Wednesday in December. I don't know exactly the dates. I think it's the 1st or 2nd. We're seeing instances when we have to send a class or 2 classes to the library or to study hall so that they can either work on Schoology or work on their assignments, because we just don't have the personnel to cover the class with a substitute teacher. And so we're trying to think outside the box. How do we help that? Most of our substitute teachers are retired teachers. Some of them chose not to come back as a result of the pandemic, which, you know, obviously everyone decides that on their own, but we're trying to figure out how do we think outside the box. And so the admin team, we have that on our agenda. I did talk with D.T. McGee, who is now the superintendent at Norwalk, but he used to be in charge of the Department of Licensure at the BOEE. And so I just kind of picked his brain a little bit. So we're going to generate some ideas at the admin meeting and and I'll probably bring some ideas for the board to consider over the next 2 or 3 months. So that will continue to be a conversation, just because we want to make sure we have safe, quality learning environments for kids, and right now we're just down on numbers of people that are willing to come in and sub. So we'll keep working on that. The natural gas, any questions about that? That's kind of a big one.
Yeah, how many subs do you usually have per day, like on an average day?
I would say sometimes 8, 10.
Got
So,
it.
I mean, last week we had, yeah. And that's just in your building. And then we add 4 or 5 more in the elementary. So I would say 8 to 10, 12,
And is that up from like last year due to like COVID and all the other stuff?
significantly.
And I know some districts have put in like full-time subs is there even a consideration of that?
We have talked to our 2 student teachers who graduate in December, and I
them.
am working with Jen Boffman on that to create a contract for them to be full-time subs
Gotcha.
next semester. So yes, we are, again, trying to think outside
Yeah,
the
no, I
box of
know.
how we can
Yeah.
how we can do that, so.
Thanks.
So you say it's more this year, which makes sense. Do you trend that ever year after year, just on number of sub days per school year or per month, so that we can kind of see and understand? Because, yeah, the full-time
Yeah.
sub, I think, is a really good solution. But
Right.
is this a temporary problem? Obviously, we don't have the crystal ball, but
Right, I would say, no, it's not a temporary problem. Before last year, we had about the same gone most days. We had more subs, though, that would come into the building. And so now we're seeing, I would say, about the same number of people absent, maybe a few more. But, and some of them are gone longer, because we have asked people, if you're not feeling well, then stay home. But we're seeing fewer people to come in and do the substitute teaching positions. We're seeing people gone longer periods of time. And so that's creating some tension that we did not have 2 years ago. So yes, we track it, how much we pay out, that kind of thing, but we don't track it to say, other than how do we get it covered. But I mean, that's definitely something we can come and report on.
well, I think the purpose behind that is just to understand what that level typically is, and so that we can understand, are we trying to address 4 positions, are we trying to address 8 positions
Right.
school-wide?
And I think it's interesting because this is as sub requirements have lessened, right? I think they dropped
Correct.
the
Correct.
requirements to be a sub. And so the whole state is realizing this problem, not just I-35.
Correct.
And is that why Sadell had to close down that one?
Correct. The
Yeah,
other high
because they
school
didn't
closed
have-
because they didn't have enough subs.
Yeah. And do they have a remote option to go up there, or is it, I don't know, I'm asking a lot of questions.
Yeah, no, and I honestly don't know if Sadell does.
Okay.
I don't know.
Because have we ever been close to shutting down for lack of subs, or, and I know that might be,
Well, I know that Steve, Jeff, Heather, Brayton, myself have all subbed. I mean, so we're covering classes sometimes. I think our administrators do that on at least 2 or 3 times a week basis, which is really taxing on then what their need to do, which I
Right.
think causes some of the challenges that we're seeing. But it's a push-pull. You want to keep kids safe and in a learning environment that's conducive, yet
yeah.
it's
No,
tough.
I know there's been multiple times where I've tried to get a hold of Sharon, and she's been in a classroom doing just that. And so
Yeah.
I appreciate the administrators and everybody else who steps in to do those things, because it keeps us here. But Sadell's not like a anomaly out there. It's happening everywhere. I mean, Pocahontas canceled classes a couple days ago for that very reason as well. So it's, I mean, you probably could raise the pay everywhere and you'd still have the same problem at this point, so.
Any other questions about that one? The natural gas contracts, Ted and I started talking about this last year. I know that we have different personalities, but Ted was worried on a Sunday because he got notification that What did they tell us the percentage was going to possibly go up on our natural gas last year?
Like 7 to 12, or 7 to 15 times the normal rate,
Which,
which would have been like $300 per decatherm versus like $3 per decatherm.
so obviously that was a concern. And that happened when Texas had the big ice snowstorm and they did not have enough electricity. And so we met with a pool that contracts with schools specifically on natural gas pricing, and then we also checked with our current supplier. The pool is 100% guarantee, but their cost was significantly higher than what we pay in a given year. And we'll bring this with more results at the end once we get through it. But the other one we looked at is just our natural gas supplier, which is Constellation, and they actually would lock in a price for us. And so we chose to do that, and it's not for, 12 months?
Right.
It's a 12-month lock-in, and then what we'll do is we'll evaluate that compared to the cost that we would have paid compared to what the pool would be, and decide and bring that to see if that's something that you want to consider entering after this season. So it's something that's on our radar. Ted, you want to talk more about that one?
It's just 75% of the total use based upon our current, or past use, the volume. So it's not 100% fixed, like she said, but close, a lot better.
I don't know that there's much question. I mean, do you have questions about that one?
Fixed budget, right? I mean,
Right.
so you're fixing the 75% of it at least, so seems like the right thing to do.
And then the last thing I have is the board.
Sharon,
Oh, I'm sorry,
real
go
quick,
ahead.
one question.
Sure.
You know, I know we are looking at replacing units in the high school, both heating and cooling.
Right.
Any thoughts on alternative or renewable type things like geo or anything like that?
Well, we've talked about solar, and I think that that's one thing that, as we get on the front end of this building project and have those funds and save, that might be
We
a
don't have
real
enough
good.
land for that.
What's that?
We don't have enough land for that.
Well, they can put them on the roof.
CT roof,
Yeah.
it's a big southern exposure? No, not enough?
No,
So
just-
I honestly don't know enough about it, but I know that that's been part of the conversation. We just don't have the funds to consider that right now, unless we were to do more bonding, and I don't think
Okay.
that's a high priority based on what people have told me. So,
Do we have,
Well, I'm sorry, I guess the root of my question was if we are looking at replacing some heating units, full units in the high school area, before we've just been adding air conditioning, which that's kind of a separate animal. Should we be looking at some of that stuff, or at least getting some cost comparisons and ROI on GEO, or is there all electric rates versus natural gas, that type of thing?
sure. And if you look on the agenda for the next board meeting tonight, that is one of the considerations. We are going to ask you to consider a contract with an engineer to help us work through that.
Okay.
do we have examples of other districts that maybe have done alternative type things?
At this time, no, but like I said, when we work through this process, I would think that that would be something that we'll bring in, because we'll bring the options to you to work through and see which options you want to consider. But any of those things that you want to bring, I mean, we'll definitely talk to them about them. We've talked about things like we have the chiller unit that we just got replaced 4 years ago, that does the elementary office and the library over there and the middle school gym, but it's not at full capacity. So what happens if we expand the capacity of that, a unit that we already have, would that be cost effective, which might then allow us to do some different options? So I don't think the engineer is opposed to considering anything. When we met briefly with them to talk through what their services were, what they can provide, I think they're open to really giving us any kind of feedback or any kind of proposals that we're interested in seeing. Anything else on that one? The last one I have on there is the board document organization, and that I think we're working with our ISFIS partners, which is who we subscribe for our board policy uploads to the website on what that looks like. I'm not, I know we have a meeting scheduled in the next week or two for that, so I'll bring more information. I just know we had talked about it. You had asked questions about what our options were. We did talk to some of the business managers and superintendents at the School Board Association conference when we were there last week and got some feedback on which ones they liked, which ones they don't like. So now we're going to start to look at, first of all, what comes with the option that we already have, and then if that's going to meet our needs, then we're going to work with that group, and if not, then we'll look at, based on what we want it to be, looking for a service that would provide that. So we are making headway on that, but we don't have any recommendations for that on this agenda. That's all I have.
All right.
Unless you have other questions.
Not hearing any, we will go ahead and move to the consent items. Discuss and or approve the consent items. Everybody should have received the past meeting minutes, the monthly bills and financial statements, and open enrollment information. We did have a couple of resignations and contracts. Don Brommel resigns as assistant middle school boys basketball coach. Jesse Baldwin hired as assistant middle school boys basketball coach, and Marcia Hood hired as wrestling cheer sponsor. These do require a motion and a second to approve.
I'll move to approve the consent items as presented.
And I'll second that.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the consent items as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll go on to items for discussion. The election canvass results, this does require a motion and a second to approve.
Yeah, so we got the results back from the school board election from Warren County, and we just need to accept those results. So we are accepting Monica Strange. I feel bad because I think everybody knows, but Monica Strange and Melissa Keller being added to the board, and we're going to recognize Cindy Cassidy and Sarah Hughes for their work on the board after this. So just to be clear in the minutes.
I'll move to accept the results of the election canvass
I'd
for
second
the school
that.
board election. Sorry.
No.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we accept the results of the election canvass results. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that brings us to our final item on the agenda, the recognition of outgoing board members.
So I asked, because I think we've had two members leave the board, but they left not at the term, so we were kind of at a loss for what typically happens. So I just wanted to start by first thanking you, because this work is often rewarding, but sometimes challenging. So I just want to start by saying thank you. We do have something that I want to give you. I'm not going to have a microphone, so I'll just talk loud. I have you give this. Oh, perfect. So this is a plaque or a certificate that just is a certificate of recognition for outstanding dedication and commitment to Interstate 35 Community School District. And when I say that, I mean community, students, staff, everybody involved, because what you guys do here is so invaluable, and it's just a recognition for their work. So I have one for Cindy Cassidy. And for Sarah Hughes. Thank you so much. And I'll open up to the other board members if you guys want to say anything as well, but surprise. But I do think it's one of those things that I'm always thankful when we have people on the board that are committed to the organization or to the institution, and you two exemplified that. So I just want to thank you. It's been a joy to work with you, and I'm glad both of you are willing to work on other committees. So thank you very much.
Surprise.
No, they agreed.
Well, I would also like to thank both of you. The past couple years have been difficult at times. We've had some very frank conversations at times, but serving with you has been a pleasure and a privilege, and I appreciate everything you've done.
I don't know that I'm ready, but yeah, Cindy, I've known you for a long time. We had a long conversation about if you were to join the board and all those things, and it was, I hoped it was a good experience for you. I know I had a very good experience serving with you, so I appreciate your time and efforts. Sarah, we sat together for, a couple of years. I've known Josh a long time since he served on the board before, and I've found nothing but the utmost character. So I very much appreciate both of your service, time, effort. It does take some time and effort, but it is rewarding. So thank you.
Well, I'll let you both know how I really enjoyed serving with you and really appreciate your dedication to our students, staff, and the entire community. So really appreciate it, and I am extremely grateful that you're going to stay on with several other committees to help us finish some of the stuff that we've got started. So thank you.
Well, I'd just like to say it's certainly been an honor being a school board member and serving with all of you. It's been a tremendous ride. It's been a privilege serving the district, the staff, the students, the parents, the whole community. So that was just, as far as me being on the board, my intentions were to certainly do the best I can to promote learning, and every decision, every thought was for the betterment of the school district. So we certainly were in uncharted territory and with no reference point, obviously. So we kind of muddled through it, but with every good intention in mind. So I appreciate everything that the school board has done and will continue to do, and the best of luck to Melissa, Monica, and to the rest of the school board and the staff. So thank you.
I would just echo some of the comments. The students here at I-35 are amazing. They are going to do wonderful things, and I'm just glad that I was able to see some of the beginnings of those things for those students. Working alongside all of you, all the administrators, the teachers. It's just a phenomenal experience. The mission statement that we read each meeting talks about what we're going to do, and the last 22 months we have seen such dedication by all of the people here at the school. Whether they were delivering the meals to kids that maybe needed those during the early days of the pandemic, assignments, just checking in with people. I mean, everybody just stepped up and did whatever they could do. It's never easy making these decisions, and there's always multiple sides, and not everybody's going to be happy with the decision that's made, but you have to be willing to step out and do that. And I wish nothing but the best to Melissa and to Monica as they step up and do this. It is such important work, like Sharon said, and our students are counting on all of you. And I know you're going to rise to that occasion with that. And I'll do my next little spiel. I hope you did all see that article in the Tri-Corner for the Education Foundation. Next week with Giving Tuesday, I do hope you will take your time to consider doing that. Maybe you work for an organization that would match what you donate as well. So that's something to consider with that. And So tonight, I just say thank you and go Roadrunners. So.
Actually, it does require a motion to adjourn and a second, and so I would entertain that from one of the members on my left.
Which you want to do? Go ahead. I'll make a motion to adjourn since I already did it earlier. So I'll do that again.
And I'll second that.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we go into adjournment. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, guys.
So we'll take about 2 minutes and then 3 minutes and then start our organizational meeting for the next board. 5 minutes, thank you.